No, she wouldn't run. Not yet. Her best bet right now was lying low, making like a hole in space and hoping to go unnoticed. That and praying. "Captain." Daniels turned toward Nirov. The bridge lights were dimmed, part of the energy reduction program to extend the ship's battery life, but she saw the concern on his face through the dark shadows. "It definitely looks like a Federal ship," he continued. "A frigate, I'd bet. It's firing at another vessel." Nirov nodded, but she didn't reply. She'd been hearing rumors for months now that the Federal Navy intended to institute a blockade of Haven. "I guess I can upgrade that from rumor status." She sighed softly. She'd known for a long time that things were bad on the troubled colony world. How you generally didn't need to smuggle weapons onto a world that was stable. But the unrest had been growing for years now, and there were secret groups all over the planet plotting and scheming, preparing for rebellion. And the latest increase in federal levies stationed there had only poured gas on a smoldering fire. But a blockade? She had an idea of what it cost to station a naval squadron in the system, and if the Federals had committed that kind of funding, they were serious about tightening their control. That meant this was a major escalation by the Federals, one guaranteed to push the Havenites to the brink of open war. That wasn't just a guess on her part, either. She was acquainted with enough of the Independence leaders to know they would not take this lying down. It didn't change the fact that she had bills to pay, though. "Well, it looks like our jobs just got harder, boys." She glanced around at the 3 members of her bridge crew as she spoke, trying to sound as calm as she could for their benefit. Her people were experienced, so at least they had that going for them. But this was a very different situation than they'd been dealing with for the last 2 years. Before today, they had been cleaning up, shipping weapons to the rebels on Haven, and making obscene profits doing it. The situation had been nearly perfect. The Eurasian Union and the Federal America's other rivals, anxious for any opportunity to shove a thorn in their adversary's side, had been more than willing to sell her cutting-edge ordnance for a pittance. And she'd had little trouble slipping past the federal customs patrols to deliver those cargoes to her rebel clients, who paid exorbitant prices for her smuggled goods. She'd almost felt guilty about charging so much. Almost. It had been a milk run, the easiest money she and her people had ever made, but she suspected things had just become far more problematic. Slipping past a revenue cutter or two was child's play for a smuggler as capable as Nirov, but fencing with Federal Navy frigates was a different game, a far more dangerous one, and she didn't relish the thought of losing Vagabond and spending the next 10 years in a federal penal colony for smuggling. That is, if they weren't just blown out of space. "Captain?" The instant she heard Daniels, she knew something was wrong. "I think the other ship is Wasp." Nirov felt a chill run down her spine. Wasp was another smuggler, and her captain was Sergei Brinker, Nirov's old first officer, gone out on his own 6 months before. Sergei. She turned back toward Daniels. "I want that confirmed, Griff." "I'm as sure as I can be, Captain, at least without an active scanner pulse." "Very well." Nirov spoke softly, a touch of emotion slipping through her cold veneer. "Maintain status." Daniels hesitated. Yes, Captain," he finally said. Then he added, "Wasp doesn't have a chance, does it? Not unless... Unless what? Unless we go barging in there and fire on a Federal frigate?" Her voice had more edge than she'd intended. She just hated the idea of watching someone she knew, someone she cared about, get arrested by the Federals. But her first responsibility was to her own ship and crew, and Wasp and Vagabond together were still no match for a Federal frigate, at least not without an element of surprise they wouldn't have. Nirov was glancing at her exec, but he didn't respond. Not that she expected him to. What could he possibly say? He just nodded slowly and turned back to his workstation. Nirov fidgeted nervously in her chair. She knew Daniels hadn't deserved to be the target of her angst. It's just that she was worried about Brinker and his people. Wasp's captain was a free spirit, a man who despised rules and authority. She couldn't imagine what 10 years in a Federal prison camp would do to him. Every fiber in her being was pushing her to intervene, to throw Vagabond into the encounter and fight it out. But she couldn't. She wouldn't. Her crew came first, and she couldn't toss away their lives on a fool's errand. No, she couldn't help Wasp. All she could do was watch and hope the smuggler managed to escape. Somehow.